Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see everyone's faces smiling so nice today. And giggling in the background as well. So good afternoon and welcome to the Polk County School Board's work session. We will now call the work session for October 22nd, 2024 to order. I would like to thank everyone for being here, especially our staff. Thank you so much. Appreciate your availability and your accessibility to us and addressing any concerns that we have today. So we are humbled to serve alongside you and the most highly educated workforce and dedicated workforce in the nation. And I would like to start by reading our Who Are We statement. So we are Polk County leadership and governance team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered. Because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions are focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. The four most important things to our governance team are: 1, operating with integrity; 2, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other; 3, establishing a culture where stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth; and 4, supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. And then collectively, we need to work on behalf of the children that we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There's no acceptable alternative to that. So we will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff members. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. So we hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Superintendent Hyde to lead us in our work session today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of staff. Thank you for being here. At this time, we are going to vacate this room. We're going to go into a closed session for the purposes of discussion with the board. So I'm going to ask Mr. Pitts, Ms. Jenkins, Mr. Warren, and Mr. Davis to please remain in the room. I will ask for everyone else to please leave the room.
For the record, this is a closed session that's authorized under Florida statutes for the purpose of having the superintendent and his negotiating team discuss collective bargaining agreement issues with the board in a closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
And at this point, we will now adjourn, bring public in 5 minutes.
5-10 minutes, yes.
Okay. So board members,
Davis, go ahead.
I will call this meeting to order and then as well adjourn this meeting so we can bring the public in.
Go ahead and let them know, please. Thank you. Patty does? About what?
All right, we'll now call this work session for October 22nd, 2024 back to order. And with that, Superintendent, could you please lead us in the rest of our work session today?
My pleasure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, at this time, the next 4 items before you are, fall under Ms. Leanne Bennett, Senior Director for Career and Technical and Adult Education. She's also joined by Ashley White, Senior Coordinator for Workforce Grants. As the board has requested, anytime we receive a grant, whether it's a renewal or a new grant and it exceeds $1 million or it's $1 million or more, the board has asked us to make sure that we share that for all transparency. So, Ms. Bennett, it's all yours.
So you have our 4 annual grants that we receive annually. The first one is our secondary Perkins grant. It was at $1.7 million. This is an increase from last year. We also just received a roll forward allocation of an additional $345,000. And this is targeted for our secondary CTE students. Does anybody have any questions about secondary Perkins?
Ms. Miller.
Sorry, I'm late to pulling this up, but I had a note on this one. This one, if you look at the other grants, it's, there's more of a description in it. So can you talk a little bit about what salaries, what personnel is covered with Perkins?
Yes, I know that Ashley, our coordinator position, we have a couple of coordinator positions covered under that. Our senior coordinator for community involvement is covered under that. And then we had a TRST. And we have 1 technician.
Does that change throughout based on need? Can you change those positions?
We have.
The grant
We've
slide.
adjusted based on need, and if we've found that we need to add something to enhance our programs, we've done that before.
Okay, great. The description is to develop more fully the academic, career, and technical skills of secondary educational students who elect to enroll in those technical education programs. I just wanted for the public to know a little bit more about how that grant develops more fully the academic career. It doesn't give a lot of details. So you can just give a little snippet about
Okay.
Perkins?
So
Thanks.
we use secondary Perkins to provide supplies and equipment into the CTE classroom that, of course, will enhance the instruction occurring in that classroom. We use it for transportation and field trips, especially for our career and technical student organizations, to go to their competitions and participate in their events. So those would be FFA, FCCLA, FBLA, HOSA, the Gamut, DECA, Skills USA. So we use a lot of funds to help get our students to those events. And then we also use the funds to provide professional learning and training for our teachers.
And there's a system for those teachers to
Yes. We have
benefit from those?
Yes, we have for the equipment and their needs, we have a needs assessment that teachers fill out annually. It's actually open a lot, so they can continuously request their needs. And we try to meet those as much as we can.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Okay, our second grant is the Adult General Grant. It's $1.6 million. It's an increase from last year. Last year, the whole state had a decrease, but everyone got the increase back this year. And this targeted audience is for the adult GED and ESOL programs, and there were no new positions.
No questions.
Our next grant is our corrections grant. It's $100,000. The whole state had a decrease of this one, and our targeted audience is incarcerated adults for their GED and ESOL training at the Central and South County Jail. And we recently had last month our first graduate with his GED from that program. Any questions?
No questions.
Our last grant is the post-secondary Perkins Grant, $202,000. This is a slight decrease from last year, but we have received an additional $39,000 in roll forward funds, and this is for our adult CTE students. Any questions?
No questions.
All right.
And for the board, this will be coming in the near future. We were informed late last week that the state of Florida has issued additional appropriations, a little over $1 million for agricultural education. So Polk County benefited by almost $1.1 million in additional funding. So we're excited to be able to support that and workforce development opportunities there.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Thank you, Ms.
Have a
White.
great day.
You too. Next item is Ms. Tammy Williams. Oh, sorry. Audrey Kelly and Sherry Scott will be presenting this. I apologize. And I believe this is a reoccurring submission every 2 or every 3 years. So please, every 2 years.
Years. It's our school health services plan. I'd also like to introduce Brenda Register. She oversees school health for the Department of Health. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I appreciate everyone on the board and superintendent. Just to give you all should have the handout that went with this. And basically this, every 2 years, we have the school health services plan, which outlines how we work together, the Department of Health and the school board, to make sure that school health services are provided in our schools in Polk County. It's divided into basically 4 parts. And the reason it's divided into 4 parts is because it depends on the funding source for the health department. So that's why they have it divided into 4. First, we have our basic school health. Every school gets these services. And I'm just going to tell you that even though they all get these services and it goes up into how they get different services for comprehensive and full, we are always trying to give all of our schools more services. And I would like to thank you because since COVID, we've been able to add some nursing, not just to the health department, but also to the school board to make sure that we can give the best services out there. And I'd also like to give a thank you to all of our RNs and LPNs who work with the schools because they make this plan come to life. And we just couldn't do anything without them. And I know I'm a little nervous, but I just want to thank them ahead of time because they're just the best people with which to work. So basically, our basic school health services are anything that you can think of that a nurse might need to do for a school. That would include medication, treatment. It would include documentation, following doctor's orders. It would include making sure the children have their immunizations, making sure that we do the health screenings that are required, and they're required at different grade levels, doing different type of preventive services. We have second grade dental sealant program that goes through all of our schools. Half of it is provided by the school, by the Department of Health, the other Central Florida Healthcare, and they do a great job. We do health education. We refer out to social services and health services as needed. And then it just goes up from there with education and pieces like that we have. We are very pleased to work with the Department of Health. And I just like to say when people come to us from the state, because every year or so from the Department of Health, they send people to come out and see how we're doing. And they always comment on how wonderful our relationship is with the Department of Health. And it's something that we treasure and we don't take for granted. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say? Yes, please.
Hi, everybody, Mr. Chair, board members, Mr. Superintendent. We are very excited to bring forward health services to you because we think it's important for everybody to know how we are doing everything possible to keep our students as healthy as we can. Healthy students come to school more often, and healthy students learn more. And so when we can support students in terms of their overall global well-being, both physically and mentally, they are going to be more successful for us in the long term. So this is a benefit to every child in our district, and we're very proud of the relationship that we have with the Department of Health to provide these services for our students. This is the Department of Health's plan. We partner with them to make sure that it's implemented correctly within our school system, but that relationship is critical and vital to the success of our students.
And board members, we do have an incredible relationship with the Department of Health here locally. Dr. Jackson's pending or looming retirement will be some tough shoes to fill. She has been an incredible thought partner. And also her and her staff spend countless hours with myself and our team at the EOC anytime we have a sheltering event. They're the ones that coordinate the relocation and the supports for our special needs patients and guests at Ridge, at at Ridge, at McKeel, and at the Bartow Civic Center. I am pleased to share that we'll be relocating the McKeel Special Needs Shelter to Tenorock in the very near future, now that we got the grant funding for the generators and whatnot, so we can sustain that facility. But I did want to get an opportunity to thank you all publicly for all that you do. In addition to not only those types of issues, but dealing with the unfortunate crises that pop up from time to time. I mean, Sherry, you've heard me recognize her and her team publicly on numerous occasions, but they do quite a bit. And mental health is a county-wide focus, and you received a copy today of the analysis and a survey that was performed by Polk Vision using their grant funding. And they've identified some opportunities for us, and so we will be meeting to talk about how to take some steps to address any perceived or real deficiencies that we have, not only internally, but in our collaborative efforts with the Sheriff's Office, with other organizations here, and the Department of Health plays a significant role in that. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say thank you for all that you all do to support us. So, did you have anything else to contribute or say? I'm sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot either.
Okay, thank you. I just reiterate that, yes, we have a wonderful working relationship. I've actually been doing school health for 20 years now, and it is a remarkable partnership, and we have maintained that close partnership throughout those 20 years.
Very good. I see no questions. Thank you all very much. Board members, I had committed to a short break, but I know we took a break in between as we allowed the public to return. I'll look to board members to see if we still need to take a short break here. I don't see any heads nodding or yeses or indications, so we will continue with the agenda. At this time, I'd like to bring Nicole Bennett forward. She's a Regional Assistant Superintendent for the Division of Schools, Polk Transformation Office. Ms. Bennett, as you recall, replaced Pat. She's done an amazing job working with our DA schools, our turnaround schools. She's here to talk to you today actually about two topics. So I will probably take the second one out of order since you're already here. The first topic is, in accordance with Florida statute, we do have a requirement to present to you the school improvement plans and a review opportunity. So Ms. Bennett, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board Chair, members of the Board, Superintendent Hyde. Again, my name is Nicole Bennett. I'm the Regional Assistant Superintendent for the Polk Transformation Office. I'm here today to speak about school improvement plans, or SIP plans. SIP plans are required every year and include how schools will engage stakeholders, address early warning systems, support ESSA subgroups, and identify areas of focus which include academics and also address culture and environment at the school level. SIP plans are driven by individual school data. When schools are truly utilizing their data to inform their decisions, we see and are seeing results happening in our schools. Before I go, I thought I had a PowerPoint, but I don't see it. I wanted to share just kind of how our district process is for reviewing SIP plans. We've moved past SIP plans being a document of compliance, but really an intentional plan used in our schools regularly to guide the work that is happening for all students. Everything should connect back to the school improvement plan. So our process here in our district for reviewing school improvement plans, on July 9th through the 11th, there were help sessions offered to administrators, their designees or school-based teams on how to develop the school improvement plan. On July 19th, SIP plans were due to regional leadership, and the regionals reviewed each plan and provided each school with feedback. By July 26th, all schools received their SIP plans back and made any edits or revisions, and then submitted them back to their regional for final review. By July 31st, all revisions and approvals were completed. There are 3 designations that schools can fall under. That is ATS&I, TS&I, and CS&I. Some schools don't fall under any of those 3 categories, but those are the categories that are under the ESSA identification. And all plans were submitted by August 1st, which was the deadline for submittal. This is the process we take each year to review SIP plans and work with our school-based teams to assure alignment to goals and resources. This also helps us monitor the plans for implementation. It's not just words written on a paper. We intend to follow those plans to assure the success of our students in our schools. All schools are required to do a school improvement plan. The template of the plan did change this year, which kind of threw a lot of schools off, but that's why we held those help sessions so that everybody knew how to navigate that new platform and be able to complete the school improvement plans. It still meets all statutory and rule requirements and ESSA components for support. We identify ESSA subgroups as Black, White, Hispanic, Indian, Pacific Islander, multiracial, Asian, students with disabilities, and ELL. Okay. This question came up last time, so I wanted to make sure that I had this information for you. Of our ATS and I schools, we have 72 sites that fall specifically under that designation. Of our TS and I sites, we have 17, and CS and I, we have 21 sites. We have 32 sites that have no designation under them. And really kind of the difference between those designations is, paper here. Any schools that fall under ATS&I, which is that additional targeted support and improvement, they have 1 or more subgroups below 41%. If you fall under the TS&I designation for targeted support and improvement, you have at least 1 consistently underperforming subgroup with a federal index of 32% for 3 consecutive years. And then lastly, the last category of CS&I, which is that comprehensive support and improvement, you can fall under that category in 1 of 4 ways. The first one is having an overall federal index below 41%, have a graduation rate at or below 67%, have a school grade of a D or an F, or you fall below the federal index of 41% in the same subgroup or subgroups for 6 years straight. So those are really how schools are identified under those categories and how they really work to develop those school improvement plans. All right. And I just want to reiterate that everything should connect back to the school improvement plan. It is truly a plan that informs the work happening within our schools.
Ms. Miller?
Thanks. Hi, Ms. Bennett. Nice to see you today. We do have your presentation.
Okay.
It was attached to the agenda. Can you talk about the MHA contact? I recognize the name, so how does that person work with your team?
So for mental health, I don't work with them directly, but we do have schools that have that mental health application that has to be completed. It goes to that contact, that's reviewed, and that's approved separate from the school improvement plan. But they do have to submit that mental health application.
So that's separate. Thanks for presenting this today. I think this was good information. When you mentioned that moving beyond compliance, I can tell you that I was cheering in my head because sometimes we get overwhelmed with compliance-based things, and I think in the past, some of these school improvement plans have just been, I remember finding one year that, spelling error, it was just, they had to fill it out because it was compliance. But as Mr. Green says, when you follow the plan, the results happen. And I've seen you do that in a couple of my schools, and I know that the principals have been very positive with feedback on you and your team and how you present, how you come to them and present solutions, and you do it with such care about the person in that position. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you today.
Thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Thank you, Superintendent. Ms. Bennett, thank you for the information today. Just looking through the material, I noticed that there's a new platform, right? And you mentioned that. And because I love reading these, surprisingly, because it really does. It gives you understanding the school culture. And, you know, if I'm out visiting with the principal, I might rattle off some data and they're like, oh, you're reading that thing. So, but I did notice there's no like public access point on the new platform. Just wondering, is that going to be there? Because we don't necessarily, as board members, we don't have a login to that back end side.
So November 1st is when school improvement plans are accessible to the public. They have to first be approved through the board, and then November 1st is the date that they go public. Now, we had to change our approval date for the board, which is going to be November 19th now. So November 19th for Polk County is when our school improvement plans will go public for access. But at any time, you can go to the schools, especially if they're a part of SAC or just anything happening on the campus, to see how you can help best support the school improvement plans and the information that's happening within them. So yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
You're welcome.
There are no further questions, so we're going to move on to your second topic. And I don't know if someone else needs to join us. So the next topic, board members, new board members, you would not have seen this. Under Florida's Differentiated Accountability Plan, there are requirements for schools that do not successfully improve their overall letter grade performance within a specified number of years. In this case, Crystal Lake Elementary School, if I recall correctly, they are 3 to 5 points away from their C. And we continue to work very closely with them, but we're required to submit to the State Board of Education a turnaround option plan. Prior to Mr. Nolte, prior to Mr. Sharpless's joining the board, this board addressed this with Griffin Elementary School. The turnaround option plan that we are submitting, or we're requesting approval, board authorization to submit, is virtually the same, because we see and recognize that there's a need in that community to potentially expand and provide a STEM magnet academy. So essentially what would take place is if the school failed to improve its overall grade, the school would close. Those students have to be reassigned to higher performing schools with at least a C grade or better. Those students have to be monitored for a specified number of years, and we have to report that data back to the State Board of Education, Florida Department of Education, for that period of time, 2 to 3 years, if I recall correctly. And then we would reconstitute that school and reopen it. And again, there's a lot that has to take place between now and then. Again, I feel very confident that we will continue to see that school continue to improve. I know that Mr. Green and his team are there on a regular basis, monitoring them and others to ensure that we're seeing progress towards those goals. You know, Crystal Lake has some challenges. One of their most unique challenges is the high mobility rate of the students that attend there. When you look statistically at their data, their struggle, there are a variety of issues that are being addressed there instructionally, but at the end of the day, if students aren't in a school for 2 or more consecutive years, it creates essentially an information and a learning gap for those students, because there's little continuity of instruction. So what we see is with a 60% higher mobility rate of those students who are not there for 3 or more consecutive years, that creates a learning gap. It creates a gap between the family and the school because they don't feel like they're truly connected. As you recall, this is a community wraparound school. So we have a partnership with the University of Central Florida. We have an on-site clinic. We have lots of opportunities there. So Ms. Bennett and her team are doing an amazing job, but we needed to disclose to you here today and get board approval to officially submit to the State Board of Education for their January meeting our turnaround option plan should the school not improve. Ms. Bennett, did I forget to include anything? I don't.
No, I think you hit everything. Yep.
So board members, you will see this item again this evening. Dr. Allen.
Yep. So I just would say one thing that, in reflecting on your analysis of the data, what was intriguing when that was presented there was the individual students that were consistently there had some impressive learning gains. But you were talking about the transient element of students and their student counts and so forth. So has there been any precedents across the state where we've had a school that was a community partnership school and that went into that status? No. Okay. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't, that is not something that they look at in terms of their school grade and the performance over time. under this DA statute. But I will say, last year at Crystal Lake Elementary, we did have a lot of subs. And, you know, as we know, when students have subs for multiple years, that creates gaps as well. So this year, we've really done a lot of work to assure that there's certified teachers in place, especially at grades 3, 4, and 5. And happy to report that she does have that this year. And we are seeing a huge difference as instruction is happening. The consistency of the teachers is not a different face changing, you know, every week. We're seeing some progress being made there. So, yeah.
And if a school is in turnaround status, can they have long-term subs?
Yes.
They can. Okay.
Yes, it is not, it isn't recommended, especially in a school like Crystal Lake Elementary. Certified teachers is what is recommended and whatnot, but we know, you know, things happen and, you know, filling vacancies at times is difficult. But any subs that we have in any of our turnaround schools, we're offering the highest level of support for them in the classroom so that good instruction is occurring and students are learning. So, yes.
We do have to submit a summary to the state for any school where a percentage of their students or staff who receive a specific VAM score falls below the average of other schools. We have to submit that. In this same case, when you have persistent vacancies, we take the opportunity to explain the strategies that we're using. And if you recall, several months ago, Mr. McNaughton presented that he, along with Mr. Green and others, had worked very closely with our substitute services group because over 300 of our current substitutes are what we used to have as permanent subs or help me out here, Mr. Warren. What's the word I'm looking for? Subgroup. Yeah, but we used to call them provisional, thank you, provisional subs. And so these are subs who have been with us for 2 or more years. Some have been with us as little as 1 year. And they meet typically all the certification requirements with the exception of being able to pass either the certification test or their general knowledge test. We do pull their data, we do analyze it, but one of the strategies that the academic team has done under the guidance of Mr. Green is ensure that we're providing explicit lesson plans and lesson plan delivery supports so that those students are not in an information void or a gap where they're just getting worksheets and easy work versus grade level appropriate rigor and academic exposure. So kudos to the team because we are seeing the benefits of that. Remember, the preliminary data I've already shared with you shows that our students based off PM1 are actually scoring higher than their predecessors last year at the same time. So that's a positive trajectory we continue to have, and I hope to see that replicated in our mid-year assessment data. But again, like I said, the board will see this again this evening. Dr. Allen, you went. Ms. Fields.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. So I have a question on the plan itself. I don't see that there's anything attached.
I asked,
And
we'll get those for you before this evening, Ms. Fields. We'll print those out.
okay, thank you. And then the other question that I have, I know that since I don't know what the plan looks like, you said it's going to pretty much mirror Griffin Elementary. I know that during the time that they had support, they had great support from education directives. I know we're not using them anymore. So what team will be providing them with the support that they're going to need? And it's probably some of the current team members, I would think.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bennett.
So my team, we're really on the ground at Crystal Lake Elementary every day. We are in their planning, their PLCs, analyzing data. We're walking classrooms, we're side by side with teachers. And by my team, I mean myself, my principal on assignment, and my senior coordinators out at the school. Their school is so small, so it makes it really easy to really get in and work with the teachers and with the students. We've conducted data chats with the students so students can set goals so they know what they are striving for with their learning. And we don't just wait for PM data to come out. We're looking at daily tasks we're looking at unit assessment data to determine our next steps for instructional focus. We're also working closely with Mr. McNaughton and his team of senior directors who are out there as well to support, really honing in on interventions to assure that they're happening for corrective reading and number world, so we're starting to really close those gaps for our kids. So we have a nice plan of action out there to support Crystal Lake Elementary. We're just going to continue to monitor it. I probably know the kids because I'm out there so much, but it's a great feeling because I know that they can do it. And that's really, what we want. We know this option is on the table for them, but we want to pull them out. We really do. So we're doing everything that we can out there to make that happen for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. Can I request that we get that digitally as well? I'm looking at the agenda for this evening and I don't see it this evening. Do you know where on the agenda it is?
I know I needed to bring it back to back because the board, although the State Board of Education deferred this meeting in November, so the next meeting is January.
Yes, January.
That may be why we pulled it from tonight's agenda, so you will still
So it'll
have
come in
adequate time to
November.
review it and provide commentary. It will definitely be on the November board meeting. I did personally speak to the DA department, or the department at the Department of Education, to let them know that the time and the hurricane canceling our previous meeting impacted our ability to bring it before you, get questions answered. And at the time, I shared that I was uncomfortable bringing it back to back, considering the impact it would have on a community. And they acknowledged that receiving it from me would be sufficient. If there were any concerns, they would notify us. Ms. Bennett and I were party to that conversation. And then subsequent to that, I think about a day later, they canceled the November meeting and said this won't go before the state board until January, if I recall correctly. So we do have a timeline. That's why it's not on there tonight. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. There are no further questions, Ms. Bennett. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Next item is Ms. Amato. And we have the RCMA charter contract modification.
Good afternoon, everyone. Super simple contract modification. RCMA restructured their LLC, so they just simply changed their name. So because the name appears on the contract, we just need to do a contract modification to represent the new name. That's it.
I see no questions or comments. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Amato.
you.
Thank you very much. Board members, I'm going to take liberty in the agenda. I'm going to ask Captain Shea to please come forward. And we're going to come back to the rules, or excuse me, to policies, because I'd like to go ahead and offer the board a break again after Captain Shea's presentation. In accordance with statutory changes related to school safety, we are required to provide the board with an update throughout the year specific to school safety and school safety audits. And so Captain Shea is here with us today to provide our first ever such update.
Hey, good afternoon. So yes, in accordance with House Bill 1473, the state of Florida Department of Education has said that we will provide the school board with quarterly updates on compliance visits or monitoring visits as they are stated through the Office of Safe Schools. So you were provided with a very brief document, and that is intentional on behalf of the state. I'm not shorting you any information. I'm going to elaborate on the information for you, but this is all the state provided me, so that's all I can really give you except for my word. So as you can see, since the start of school, they came and they inspected 5 schools. Now they have been in Polk County many more times than that. They do what we call safe school officer audits, which means they just show up to the school to make sure that there is either a law enforcement officer on the campus or a guardian, and they have done that all throughout the school year so far. So they've been to many campuses already. But as far as a monitoring visit, they have been to 5 schools so far. And as you can see, that couples to 3% of our district. And as the unfortunate number there in the 4th column is the number of schools in compliance. So I tell you, Yes, it says 0. So, but let me explain why that is. So, during a meeting in July with Superintendent Hyde and Sheriff Judd at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission meeting, they were successfully able to get information to the commission that allowed our school district to act like a school district. There was a lot of information put into House Bill 1473 that were best practices. Well, now they brought everything into compliance because there were other school districts that were not doing these things for compliance. So many, many years ago, the school board put in place, hey, all classroom doors are to be locked. Our school district is doing that. They're very good at doing that. That is being taken care of. Perimeter fencing, same thing. We have perimeter fencing around every school in this county. So we were in compliance with both of those items. What was the catch is that they wanted every building that contained a classroom to have that building door locked as well. So that would mean if you were transitioning from a class or you had to go to the nurse's office or something along those lines, that door would lock behind you, and then you would get to the next building, and you wouldn't be able to get into the next building because that building door was locked. So, as a result, again, Superintendent Hyde and Sheriff Judd were very vocal at the last Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission meeting to get the commission to realize and stand behind that we've got to be able to allow schools to operate and function. And they said, that's great. We will allow you to do that. What you need to do in the interim, because we can't change the bill, is that each school would have to submit an exemption. So that was what was put into place. There was a process put into place where each school had to then submit an exemption for each door. Okay? Each door that was a transition door had to be submitted as an exemption. So we had the schools go, take pictures, submit their exemption. We even came up with a slogan for it, or not a slogan, the actual exemption verbiage that they needed to submit, and they submitted hard copies. So then it was our painstaking process for Safe Schools to scan those documents into the exemption request in FSAT. And then finally, DOE came and did their first monitoring visit the second week of September. When I got that report back, they said that they were not going to accept the exemptions as is because we scanned the documents into the system and it showed multiple doors and multiple exemptions under that similar heading. So because of that, they said that the language in the law says door and gate, so we had to submit them individually. So as a result,
So if I may, just to, for complete clarity, we did what we were required to do. This is not just an exemption for Polk County. Any school that has perimeter fencing that's secured, your interior building doors can be left unlocked to allow transition. Classroom doors must be remain locked at all times, classroom and office doors. We submitted all our exemptions in one file. That's what they took objection to. And so then Captain Shea has to go back and submit. So let's assume a school has 30 interior doors that are exempt. He now has to go back and submit every single individual exemption for that school for all 131 traditional public schools. So that's why you see the compliance response here. It's not that we had any failures or breaches in our security protocol. It's simply because of the manner in which we submitted, which was not clarified at the time that we got the initial approval and authorization from the commission.
yes,
So,
yes, absolutely. Thank you for that, sir.
Yes, sir.
And that should simplify it. Our schools are in compliance. They are doing what the law says. We are just now getting caught up with the actual exemption forms in the system, and I can tell you we're just about there getting caught up with them. So they've been very lenient with us. They've only gone to 2 additional schools since that time, and we're doing really well. And the 5 schools that they did visit, we've already brought them into compliance in the system, so everything is moving along as it should. So that is the reason for the very brief update for the quarterly report. I look forward to giving you a much better second quarter report, as this was not fun standing in front of you today. But I will entertain any questions that you might have.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. Have we captured the additional time that it is taking staff to submit each of these individually that we can share with them?
In all honesty, we have not. We probably have a better chance of capturing the amount of time that Captain Shea and his team are doing it, because what we did was we incorporated it in our reopening master process. But next year, we can definitely do that.
And I apologize, not the initial, I think it's important to make sure that we have that cataloged, but the going back and having to resubmit it one by one.
Yeah, that really is all on safe schools, and I would have to defer to Captain Shea to see if he's.
And I will, and I will offer this, that the regional superintendents and their team were very key in this and helping us get that information, because they went back and had their teams at the school level submit the pictures individually for me. So that made my job going back in and making sure that each exemption was submitted properly. I am going to tell you, myself and my compliance guy are going back through each and every one still at this time. The state is telling us which schools they're visiting to make sure that those are correct in the system before their visit. So we're getting it done. It's just taking a little bit of time. But to categorize, it's hard based on now with all the threats that we've been dealing with since Georgia occurred, and also with the hurricane. It's hard to couple those three very big tasks that we've had since September 4th.
There's just a big difference in you all having to go through and upload it for 100 to 150 schools versus 30 times that when you look at doors per school. So I want to make sure that we're able to share that, especially if it sounds like this is something we're going to have to do year after year.
The good thing is that this document is a living document, so it will remain year to year. So basically, if the school board, or excuse me, if the school system decides that they want to go to key fobs and have electronic locks, we can take all of those exemptions out. But obviously, that would be helpful if they provided some appropriations to make that happen. That was the one thing with this, is that there was no money to go along with it. So,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I'll take the opportunity. We were also informed late last week that because of the number of false threats that have been coming into Fortify, Florida, the Commissioner of Education has directed every school district to provide a parental training on the consequences and potential impact to a student or to themselves or community members who make a false allegation or submit a false threat online. So our team is actively working to address that. But since I have Captain Shea here, since I have Major Seymour and others in our room here, I do want to say thank you. I would ask the board to join me in saying thank you. They do an incredible job. So post-hurricane, you get the updates from me about damage and everything else. And I provided you the list or the total number of school perimeter fences that sustained damage. Our fencing contractor, our maintenance crews worked as quickly as they could. It took them about roughly 48 hours to get all fences secured. But in the interim, we must still comply last Wednesday with school safety requirements. And so thanks to Captain Shea, Major Seymour, and others, and to our other partners, I want to say a sincere thank you, because they then had to flex additional officers to our campuses to literally stand at that break in our perimeter fence the entire day to ensure that it was safe. That was the only way to remain in compliance anytime you have an open gate or an opening in your perimeter fence. I also want to say thank you for the nearly 300 officers that we had at our 19 shelters. It goes a long way. When you are supporting 6,100 community people in a shelter, any number of issues can arise. You're dealing with all kinds of, people are already stressed. They're already dealing with anxiety. They've been dislocated or uprooted from their homes. Some of them were traveling from Pinellas. Some of them were not local residents. They're from outside neighboring counties. And I just want to say thank you to the Sheriff's Office. I know that goes a long way for our staff to feel comfortable knowing that they're there around the clock. And so just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for those things and give you some public acknowledgement for all that you're doing to help support us. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I see no further questions or comments, sir.
If I may, real quick, I think my boss would strangle me if I didn't share this with you. We are having a trick-or-treat event on Saturday. Trick-or-treat with Grady Judd. It'll be at Polk State College from 5 to 7. Love to have you out there as our partners in this. So you're all welcome.
Is that a trunk or treat? Is that what they're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to pass that along? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Board members, I'm going to look to you because there are several policies to address, and we dedicated quite a bit of time to this. So before we begin, do we need to take a break? I see some heads nodding. So at this time, I'm just stalling so that the crew next door can get prepared. I'd like to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. It is 2:30 exactly. We will come back at 2:40. Thank you.
That's really funny. We get to the Lakeland Leads thing yesterday.
All right, board members. Appreciate the break. And here we go. So I will now call this work session for October 22nd back to order at this point. And Superintendent, I'll now hand it off to you to help us work through the rest.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. At this time, I'd like to bring Mr. Chad Davis and Ms. Teresa Gifford forward. Board members, you may recall, this is, again, due to the cancellation of the previous board meeting due to the hurricane. This is the same, these are the same policies that were reviewed previously, correct?
These are the policies that were supposed to be on the October 8th.
October 8th, correct, I'm sorry. And then we will then, if there are no revisions or requests, then there will be a public announcement, advertising, and then it will come back to the board for approval in the near future. We delayed adding any additional policies due to the length of this list. Those will come to you in November, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As Mr. Hyde said, the policies that I'm presenting to you now, along with the policies that I presented at the September 24th work session, those are the policies that Mr. Murphy will be asking for approval to advertise later today during the board meeting. So he'll ask for authority to advertise those so we can go to public hearing. So today, the policies that I have, most of them are from the 2024 legislative session. So I'll just go through them with a few pauses to see if you guys have questions. So the first one is actually Board Bylaw 131, and it's the legislative policymaking bylaw. And this just provides the board flexibility to adopt a policy before the statute is actually effective. So there are times where in a policy it'll say like beginning January 1, 2025 or something like that, like a future date. You can go ahead and adopt the policy even though the statute doesn't take effect until a later date. So that just adds language to that bylaw explaining that. Policy 2432 is our driver education policy, and this just gives the school board the flexibility to choose to contract with the county tax collector to administer road tests on school grounds. And this is from Senate Bill 958. The next group of policies is our athletic coaches and part-time extracurricular personnel policies. And this is from House Bill 865, which just requires coaches to be certified in CPR, first aid, and the use of an AED. Our fiscal planning policy, Policy 6210, incorporates two different Florida statutes, 200.065 and 1011.03. And this just requires that we publish our tentative budget and millage on our website. And then Policy 8310 is our public records policy. And there's House Bill 1509, which exempts us from identifying anyone as a school guardian. So whereas through public records, we get requests all the time for like a list of our employees, like things like that, but we can't release anything that identifies someone as being a school guardian. So that information is always exempt from release as a public record. I'm going to take a quick pause if there are any questions about that before I move into all of our safety and security.
Mr. Sharpless.
Yes, I have a question on policy 6210, the fiscal planning. Because of the statute change, we're required to publicize the both the budget as well as the millage on our website, and I was just curious for transparency to the public, where do we publish that on our website so they can go and see that?
I don't know the exact, like, how to get there, but, I don't know if Heather's in here. But it's, I mean, you'll be able to do like a keyword search up there, but there is like a page where I just don't know the exact route to get there.
Mr. Pitts, do you know where that's located presently? Yes, sir.
I can't remember which things you click on to get there, but, JD Fout showed it to me the other
However,
day.
based off this, Mr. Sharpless, what may be required is we add a tile to the front page for financial transparency. And so I can speak to Mr. Geary, Ms. Pasco, and the team about how to best address that so that we don't have to require drilling down into the school board website. Yes, sir.
Perfect, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Ms. Miller, I apologize.
I just have a question about, I mean, it's fine adding it. I just didn't, we're adding a bylaw saying that we can adopt a policy authorized by law and necessary before statute, but like what you just mentioned with our security guards, we could do that anyway. Do we need the bylaw?
You're referring to bylaw 131 that just says we can adopt something before the date goes into effect?
Yeah.
We're not required to have that language in our policy.
Okay,
It's for like clarification.
Okay.
It's like it clarifies that the board's allowed to do that. You've always been allowed to do that.
Okay, I'm not one for adding things that we already do, but I understand. Thank you. I mean, that it's already allowed.
Correct.
We're already allowed to do it. We already do it. It's already in practice. It's already in practice, but we're going to add a bylaw in case one day we're not here and somebody else needs to know they're allowed. Thank you.
Sometimes Neola goes through the policies and just tries to clean things up and like clarify things,
Right.
or take things out that aren't relevant anymore. And this is just one of those. It doesn't change the way we've done things in the past. It's just to provide clarification. So that's really board discretion on whether we add that.
No further questions.
Okay. So moving into the next several policies, are school safety and security. So policy 8405 is based on House Bill 1473 and 5101, which defines the responsibilities of the school safety specialist. It also responding to a notice suspected deficiency from the Office of Safe Schools, and then it also outlines the duties of the threat management coordinator. And then additional revisions are from Florida Rule 6A-1.0955, which removes the language addressing transient or substantive threats and non-threats, and then references the new Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Instrument, and then also references the new Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Model. Policy 8406, reports of suspicious activity and potential threats to schools. It includes requirements from House Bill 1473 that school districts provide age and developmentally appropriate instruction on 4 to 5 Florida within the first 5 days of each school year. And then policy 8407 is our safe school officers policy, and House Bill 1473 addresses certification, training, and reporting for individuals appointed as school guardians. Policy 5730 is our equal access for non-district sponsored student clubs and activities. And this is just another one of those where Neola is trying to clarify in policy, so it updates the list of protected classes and security requirements related to visitors. 8415 is emergency crisis management. This is from Senate Bill 7002, which requires that the school board permit certain access and use of district facilities pursuant to the county emergency management plan. And then policy 8420 is our emergency management, emergency preparedness, and emergency response agencies policy. And this is based on House Bill 1473 regarding school safety inspections and reporting responsibilities of the school safety specialists. Any questions about our school safety policies?
Seeing none.
Okay, and then our transportation policy is revised based on Senate Bill 994 and 7002, and it just relates to school bus signage and optional school bus infraction detection systems. Any questions about the transportation policy?
Seeing none.
Okay, and then the final two policies, these aren't based on any updates from statute, but there was a discussion at a previous work session about potentially adding something to either our student and parent rights policy or our school nutrition policy surrounding students being allowed to bring their own lunch. So this is an opportunity we needed to notice that, we needed to advertise that we were going to discuss it. So I'm bringing that back today.
And may I just say for the record, Mr. Board Chair or Mr. Superintendent, that's something that we are continuing to work on as we move forward. We're trying to move forward with a great number of policies right at the moment, but Board Member Wyatt had come up with some proposed language, and I'm still working with the superintendent and his team on coming up with some specific language that may address that, and we're not prepared to give that language today. But as Ms. Griffin said, we're just letting you know that that is something that we're continuing to discuss, and that I don't know that we'll have an advertised policy ready for the November 19th meeting. We still have to vet it through you all, but it is something that is on our radar, and we're continuing to move forward with so that you all may consider it.
Ms. Wyatt?
I was going to say much less eloquently exactly what Mr. Murphy said.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, Ms. Griffin?
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Pitts, Ms. Jenkins, and Mr. Warren. This is the AFSCME bus employee contract salary agreement.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm very happy to be before you today to discuss the fact that you have a recommended action to make a motion to approve the 24 to 27 AFSCME bus driver and bus attendant collective bargaining agreement. And that includes the 24-25 salary settlement. We began negotiations with AFSCME on September 19th. We did meet twice in 2 sessions, and we were successful in reaching a tentative salary agreement on the 23rd of September. The group was very aggressive in the fact that they did a vote over the weekend of October the 19th. The results came in from Ms. Patterson, and the fact that the vote was unanimous to accept the proposal that I'm going to continue to summarize for you. There were a total of 191 votes cast. 152 of those were drivers, 39 of those being attendants. So pending the school board approval, the attached tentative hourly rate increases become retroactive to July 1, 2024, and the term of the new collective bargaining agreement will be July 1, 2024 through June 30th of 2027. In summary, the substantive revisions is the fact that bus drivers, we continued, as you heard earlier today, we continue to address recruitment and retention, raising entry-level drivers with no prior experience. They will see an increase from $18 an hour to $19.08. So we're getting more and more aggressive to compete with our surrounding districts. We are super proud to announce that that's a 6% increase for those folks that will be retroactive to July 1, 2024. The perfect attendance bonus that has been in place for 11 years also will continue to be in place for the next year as well. The cost of the financial impact of this increase for the 24-25 AFSCME bus employee salary settlement is estimated to be $574,912, and that does include salaries and benefits. If you got a time to also review the options, we did come together. We worked collaboratively to come back and then present multiple options. The group did go with option 4. That's what they went out for vote on. And you can see in summary there the percentage increases for the various salary levels for drivers. Salary level 1 did see a 6% increase. They increased to $19.08 on the hour. Salary level 2 is 2.75%, and they increased to $19.83. Salary level 3 had a 3% increase, increasing to $21.22 an hour. Salary level 4 saw a 3.25%, increasing to $22.04. And salary level 5 saw also a 3.25% increase, and their hourly rate being $22.04 as well. The placement schedule remained unchanged, and I wanted to talk about attendance. I missed the bus attendance summary. The bus attendants, their current hourly rate was $15 an hour. That increased by 2% across the three levels, and so they saw respectively increases of $15.30 an hour, $15.56 an hour, and $15.81 an hour. So again, I will summarize. This will be coming to you back to back this evening, so we can be working to get this out to these members. So you'll see it in the board agenda with the request to have a motion to approve the ratification of this agreement as summarized to you today. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Ms. Fields?
I don't have any questions, but I want to commend you guys for coming back with something that, to me, is amazing, considering where we started many years ago and where we are now. And I know that there's a tremendous need for bus drivers and bus attendants. So now I think we have an opportunity to be competitive and to be able to offer the employees what they deserve to have, especially on those buses with those babies. So just want to say great job. Thank you.
See no further questions or comments, sir. Thank you. Board members, the last item I have under the superintendent's report before we transition into the remainder of the meeting is the hurricane makeup days topic. As the board will be voting on the calendar this evening for subsequent school years, I'd also like to ask the board to address the issue of the makeup days. As you know, each and every year when we provide a proposed calendar to the board, it includes makeup days. But historically, the school district has used a combination of strategies to address that. So let me give you an example. Some of the first makeup days are the Thanksgiving holiday break, the Monday and Tuesday. Many believe that that's incredibly disruptive, especially this late stage with hurricane season being so close to November, and the potential impact. Families have already, and staff have already made plans for travel and other things. So we came, and I provided to the board two proposals. We shared those proposals with PEA and with others. The first proposal was to convert the second day that staff were to return after the winter holiday break to a full day of instruction, and then convert 4 early releases to let us recapture 3 instructional days that would need to be made up due to both Hurricane Helene closure and Hurricane Milton closures. Subsequent to that, I also provided the board with a second option and discussed this at length with others about converting 6 early releases to full instructional days. I would believe that I know that PEA shared that they surveyed their staff and that the overwhelming response, and I'll invite Ms. Yoakum to the podium if I misspeak in any way, was staff preferred to convert 6 early releases to full instructional days to make up those 3 days. That's also my preference. So Ms. Yoakum, I see her head nodding. I know that others have supported that, and so that's the recommendation to the board. Just to clarify for the public and others who had questions, well, why didn't we convert the Wednesday or the Thursday half day and the Friday teacher planning day to instructional days? Just a reminder that while I have a great deal of authority, especially as it relates to emergency closures, I do not have the authority to change the calendar. That is solely a board topic. That is your purview, not mine. And we did not have the ability to call a meeting because many of you were dealing with storm damage and other issues as we were dealing, as well as others, to call a meeting. And so this was the first opportunity in which to address that. In addition to that, I wouldn't be as transparent as I like to be if I didn't acknowledge that part of what we strived to do last week was to bring staff back, let them check in with each other, let them check in, and we could determine how they're doing. As you know, we surveyed staff for their needs. We've been responding to those. I've been responding to individual employees as far as their needs and connecting them to resources, but also to get our students back, check in on them, check in on their mental health and other issues, provide some meals, and then let them go ahead, return home, let families and staff deal with any remaining hurricane-related topics or issues that are affecting their lives, over that Thursday and Friday because there was insurance villages that had been opened at our pre-funding center. There were other federal resources here at Bartow Civic Center. We wanted to make sure our staff had those opportunities. We canceled professional development on Friday intentionally so that we could allow them the flexibility to stay in their classrooms, do the things they need to take care of on a personal level as well, and provide that flexibility to them. So I'm pleased with how we've managed it. I think the overall response we got was very favorable. There were a lot of questions as to why the Thursday and Friday couldn't be converted. Hopefully I've addressed those fully here today. I appreciate those who were out there who also sought to address the misconception. And again, I can understand the perception and why it could be frustrating initially, especially as many of our families are trying to return to work immediately after a hurricane. But one of the things I've shared with you and I've shared publicly, post-storm, we've got to check in on our staff. And we've got to make sure we even have enough staff to open school. That's one of the primary responsibilities. Dr. Allen can attest to this because he actually found directions from the Department of Education, from the state, of the factors we should consider before reopening our schools. We did have flooding at 2 of our schools, in particular, Socrum and McKeel. And it is the McKeel property that we own. And so those schools have had to go through mitigations. We're very appreciative of the staff flexibility there. And the teams have been working there to remediate and replace drywall and do all the things they need to do. And I'm very pleased to announce that as I shared earlier, McKeel should not be an issue. We should not have any implications there for shelter guests in the future because we were locating that site. For Socrum, we have found that it's a combination of issues involving a neighboring agricultural farmland where there's a water retention pond that overflowed and came into the campus, brought silt into the school, into the classrooms. So we're trying to work with that agricultural developer, farmer, directly to help mitigate any future potential flooding and issues on that campus. So it's a ongoing thing. But as far as the hurricane makeup days, the recommendation from my office, depending on your feedback and approval later, will be to convert the 6 half-day early releases that I identified in my previous correspondence to you to full days of instruction, and that allows us to recoup the 3 days that we lost. Again, I should explain that because of the length of our instructional day, we actually have enough instructional minutes based off our calculation to cover 5 days in the calendar. That's why we don't always rush to make up the first 5 days after a storm. So I'll open it up to any questions or comments that you may have. Mr. Sharpless.
I just want to say that the superintendent, from the staff that I had a discussion with about these 2 options, it completely corroborates what you were just saying with PEA. Much rather take the 6 early release days and make them full instructional days. So thank you for getting the options out there. And also thank you. I'm going to take this time now to say thank you to everyone who post-hurricane helped us get our schools back online because it was a heavy lift.
It was. Thank you. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. When is this coming before us?
So I will include it basically through consensus vote. We can amend the calendar, but since you had a calendar topic before you, I felt the timing was appropriate.
Okay, perfect. I just want, as much as I want to believe that all of our constituents watch these meetings fervently, I want to make sure that we can advertise.
Oh, no, we will send a letter home to all families and all staff indicating what their makeup days are. Additionally, I will probably ask Mr. Warren, Ms. Yoakum, and others who are on that committee to reconvene because, with all due respect, if we look to convert half-day early releases, why do we keep identifying the first 2 days of Thanksgiving as the makeup days? I think we need to have a conversation about maybe tiering strategies moving forward so we don't misconstrue again, year after year, we adopt those 2 days as the first 2 makeup days, but I don't think historically you've done that in some time. It's typically been addressed through converting half-day early releases or other planning days into instructional days and not those holiday breaks. So I think for planning purposes, it probably makes sense for us to revisit that topic long-term.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fields.
I would just add, in addition to the employees being appreciative, I think families are appreciative as well.
Absolutely.
Especially as it relates to the early release days. And so thank you all for that consideration.
Yes, ma'am. My son's not happy, but everyone else should be happy.
You'll be all right.
It will be all right. It will be all right. Seeing no further questions or comments, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that concludes the superintendent's report. Mr. Pitts has requested that any conversation about staffing he will bring back. So, Mr. Chair, the remaining two items are the donation report and a quarterly report for superintendent approvals. And I will turn it over to you because from there it becomes largely about the board meeting and agenda.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent.
Yes, sir.
Board members, at this time, I would like us to transition to look at tonight's meeting. Don't forget also, we do have discipline, one hearing, one case in between our meeting, work session and board. All right. So let's go through each section at this point. So A through F, as typical. Any comments on those or questions in general, A through F? All right, now moving down into our consent, which is G through J this evening. G through J. And now section K through M. I mean, just one in general, Superintendent, I was curious on L5 and looking at that document with the BOCC. Is the end date on that interlocal agreement, which is middle of December, is that the date that all debris that would be on our property needs to be removed?
I do not have that answer, but I will confirm with staff and provide that to you this evening.
Okay. Thank you. And, okay, sections N through P. N through P. And, you know, I had asked just for a little report on the varsity tutors, P3. I don't know if that's going to be available tonight.
I believe Mr. McNaughton has that.
All right, great, thank you. And so we have section Q and R. Any comments on Q and R? All right, now we're moving down to our action agenda tonight. That would be letter S. 6 items. Thank you very much, board members. All right, we'll have the superintendent's report. I would assume you have something, Mr. Murphy.
I do have one request to advertise for a public hearing. Yeah.
All right, great. Ms. Matthews? All right, nothing. And then we'll wrap up our comments and public comments as well. Any other questions? All right, board members, thank you so much. Now we'll transition back. We have 2 items of old business, and we'll start with the general counsel. You have requested some information, and Mr. Warren has thoroughly provided that information to you. It's in that agenda item. You also have paper copies in front of you. And now we can maybe strike a conversation. And I would like Mr. Murphy, if you want to give maybe a little overview or any feedback on this particular area.
Sure, be happy to help if I can. My understanding was that at the last work session meeting on September 24, that board members had wanted the one proposal that was there to sharpen their pencil and also to have other proposals to be able to review to see if the board wished to move in the direction of getting a recruiter to assist in hiring the school board's general counsel. Superintendent graciously offered for his staff to do so, and Mr. Warren has, as you've noted, provided to you, I think, 5 or 6 different proposals that are, you know, speak for themselves, I believe. They were pretty straightforward. And I would also note that the proposal from the government, the proposal that was from SGR that you had received before, they have also somewhat sharpened their pencil on reducing the fee. I will tell you, just from an operational standpoint, that, as you have allowed the privilege of Boswell and Dunlap to provide the interim general counsel services, we are doing so. It certainly is a privilege to be able to do that. However, we want to, see this move forward, and for the board to have counsel, that's situate here in the offices. And so it seems like myself and a number of my law partners have been helping. As you might imagine, there's a broad spectrum of things that the lawyer has to do, and we're doing them. Superintendent staff has been wonderful. They are, top-notch, and the board, of course, has been great in its expectations. I think there's probably two things that probably need to be looked at, and the recruiter can probably help with that, at least sort of guide the board, and that is in demonstrating the job description and making sure that it correlates with, current times. And I think we're pretty good on that, but also salary and what the benefits and all of that need to be. And a recruiter can likely reach out and touch those sources and those things, people, places, wherever, that you hopefully will get some good, qualified candidates. Not that you haven't received some already, but there will be perhaps a more robust group that then the school board can review. And I think if you're working with a facilitator, that helps focus your attention, and it helps focus the group's effort. There's 7 of you, soon to be a new one. Unfortunately, Ms. Cunningham chose not to seek reelection, and so, or fortunately, you see Mr. Keys coming in, who I've had the privilege of meeting with as well. So, I don't know that I have anything more to report other than that. Obviously, the next board meeting is the board's reorganization meeting. It's where the new board member and the re-elected board members will be sworn in. And so, there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's probably behooves the board to get moving on this process. I know but for Hurricane Milton, we would have been having this conversation on October 8th. So I don't know if the superintendent has anything to add. I know that he's been purposefully, quite rightly, staying on the periphery of this. But he has been very helpful with allowing Mr. Warren and his team to, professionals to assist us in this process. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right, so you've got the context. 2 things that were asked was to have at least 3 proposals from external consultancy, and you've got 5 in front of you, and I really appreciate that. Went far beyond our expectations on that as well, and then you do see the salary ranges there at this point. What's the will of the board? Would you like to narrow at this point? Any feedback from you would be appreciated. All right, Ms. Fields, you're recognized.
Thank you. So I reviewed all of the proposals, and I looked at the one that was least expensive, and then the remainder of them pretty much are all the same, I think, as it relates to their fee. And I looked at what they have to offer and who they have worked with and what they have done outside of what we are wanting to have accomplished. And the one that resonates with me is the one that went back and sharpened his pencil on this SGR. And the reason why I would say that is because they're succinct, they give the timeline, they explain exactly what services they're going to provide. They talk about the advertisement piece, everything that we would need, in my opinion. He has mapped it out extremely well. And the majority of the others is just basically information on their company, with the exception of one of the proposals. And that proposal basically attached their contract. And it kind of talks about what the role that they would play versus ours. So if I were to look at this, I don't know that we need, I don't know if we're going to choose today, or if we're going, I think we need to do something, because as Mr. Murphy just referenced, we need to get busy, busier. And we have gotten a couple of, I think, additional resumes that might be promising, but I still think that we need to cast our net out a little bit further and get some more interested candidates. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Ms. Fields, for your thorough work on that. And your hearing so far, maybe we should consider moving forward. Any other perspectives on that? And I'm not sure if anybody be in opposition of anything, any action this evening, but if you have more feedback would be great. Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to especially say thank you to Brian Warren and his team for getting this information. I think it is a case study for why it's so important to get multiple contracts, because it's amazing what your best offer is when you have competition in submitting a bid. But I would agree with Ms. Fields that I think the information we got from SGR is by far the most robust and probably most aligns with what we're looking to do. I would be fine with moving forward with them this evening. The other topic was the salary discussion, which I greatly appreciate the information you were able to provide. I think that's something that we should probably, once we have hired a firm, go over with them. Because I think just from looking at your top districts that are in the same size as we are, that we are not anywhere near our range competing with those that are like size or like area. And that's probably something that we need to discuss, but I think that may be appropriate to discuss with the search firm.
Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Any other comments, board members, and feedback here? All right. So at this point, I've heard from two, and we've got some consistency on what we're seeing. I would agree as well. The strategic government resources definitely had the most thorough and experience specifically around general counsel hiring as well. But that would be my opinion. If anybody's not in opposition, we could move forward this evening and add this to our action item tonight and vote to select.
I would encourage you to do so if that's your pleasure, to
Okay.
put it on the agenda for tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
No, I usually have lots of comments, but I think Ms. Fields and you, as well as Ms. Wyatt, shared that there is a difference when you look at them, and we are behind the storm in lots of things on this process, so I would be for going ahead and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Sharpless?
For the sake of consensus, I agree with my fellow board members. I think SGR should be on the action agenda for tonight.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I see no other comments on that item, so now I'll move down to E2, which is old business around board reorganization practices, and this is more of a broad discussion, and there was a request on wanting some data. So I want to say thank you to Andrea Messina. She did a call out across the state to collect some data around how school districts handle their reorganization, so you can see that data there. And then I just did a meta study. If you go on the policies section here, and you can do a meta search on policies across the United States, and there's a collection of those there specific to the reorg, and you can see they're pretty broad across the board and their variations. And then on top of that, you'll also see a document from FSBA in regards to ideas, what could transpire in your November reorg meeting as well. And I don't know if you have any feedback on some of those that you would like to see during our reorg meeting. I thought that was a really good document as well, something we can add to this discussion. Then also was brought to my attention today as well that FSBA has noted that quite a few school districts across the state have been moving to their swearing in actually during work session rather than public meeting on that day. And I don't know if that's something that would want to be in consideration. I know that would be completely new to us, but it was just something that was brought forward from Ms. Vega when she was attending an FSBA event, and Ms. Messina was noting that. And what that basically allows for is that board member to actually be issued their system, to be ready to move into place when that first initial meeting transpires. So all that information is there in front of you. If y'all have any feedback, any thoughts, questions. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
As long as, I'm assuming it doesn't have to be a meeting to do the swearing in, but I could see how that is beneficial for both the people being sworn in and the business that needs to be conducted. So I would not be, I mean, that sounds like something we should consider, since the timing is a little odd for when we actually do it and having the person take place, the first time in front of the computer and everything. So that makes sense. The other districts have moved in that direction, so I would support that.
All right, thanks, Ms. Miller. Ms. Fields, you're recognized.
I just had a question on the swearing in piece. I don't have my calendar right up, so that's typically in the morning, if I remember correctly,
Yeah, the board meeting.
right before the
Just
board meeting.
before the board meeting, yeah. How have you traditionally?
Yeah, it's usually right before, and it's usually in the morning. And so my thing, if you did it, we would need to make sure that it's going to accommodate families being able to come. And I don't know if they can do that in the mornings. I think we just have to be mindful of that.
Do we do that in the morning?
Yeah, we do.
Looking at our board meeting that day, we have
It
the,
might not be this time, but it's always been, because when I was sworn in the last time, my family took me to breakfast afterwards. Yeah, so I remember. Right, yeah.
All I know is our bylaw says that in November of each year, we shall elect a chair and a vice chair, and the organizational meeting shall be on the third Tuesday after the first Monday in November. In non-election years, the date of the organizational meeting shall be set so that the public notice required by law can be provided. So I think the statute requires us to have it on the 19th this year because it's an election.
correct.
So I think Lori's right. It's kind of maybe
different things.
two different issues, yeah.
Yeah. Ms. Fields, anything else? Okay, great. Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Thank you. It sounds like we're doing that first. So typically, because it has to fall on that second or the third Tuesday after the first Monday, when that falls over Thanksgiving break, that's when we do it in the morning, to make sure that our staff that has to come in for one day over Thanksgiving break can do it at 9 a.m. and get in and get out, and it's a bare bones staff, and that's the only thing we do, because the third Tuesday is during the school year right now. That's why we'll do a full meeting. I'm not opposed to doing it during the day. I think we would, just because it's right around the corner, want to make sure that the other members that are being sworn in, that their families are available. I do have a procedural question, because my guess would be that we would have to have a special board meeting for purposes of reorganizing before we go into work session, and then have a full board meeting, because we can't swear them in during work session, or can we?
I mean, I'm not prepared to opine on that issue, but I think that makes sense, what you're saying, Board Member Wyatt, that, you're taking action, you're conducting an official business of the school board, and so it may be that that's why we do it in a meeting, and that's why during Thanksgiving week, we have always had a very brief meeting of the board instead of a work session. So, it's parlance, but I think it's important to note that you're taking action by swearing in members.
I would just want to make sure that because the swearing in members, because we don't vote on that, may or may not be considered action, but the reorganization would. So I just want to make sure that we're doing that appropriately if we were to move it to earlier in the day.
It would seem to me, without the benefit of anything further, that you could swear in members at a work session.
Right.
But that if you were to take any actions, such as the reorganization and all that, that would have to be at a meeting.
Yeah, it would be
Couldn't
good
be
to
at a
know
work
on that, Mr. Murphy. I appreciate that. Because, I was wondering the same thing, because it's not a point of action, in essence. The voters have acted.
Right, but it does connote ceremonial.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an important thing. And so, and I'm not speaking in a legal sense at this point, but it's always been an important milestone in whoever's lives are involved in accepting the duty of public service.
Indeed.
And so you want to give it, the due that it is accorded or should be accorded. So whether you call that a work session or whether you call it a meeting, I think we've always done it at a meeting, if my memory serves, but that doesn't mean you have to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Ms. Cunningham, you're recognized.
I was just going to say, it seems like it's two different things, sort of. One is, the swearing-in ceremony for the new board members, and then secondly is reorg. They usually kind of happen very quickly and together, but depending on the will of the board, you could do, as the information we've received, to have the swearing-in prior to in the work session, so the families would have time and celebrate whatever, and then be able to learn about the computer so that when the meeting starts, the new board members or re-elected members can come back up, take their seats, and then you start reorg at the beginning of that duly called public meeting. So I see it kind of as two things, and whoever's, the ones that are coming in, you need to decide. But I've always been sworn in during a regular 5 p.m. board meeting. But again, the reason the early one was exactly what Ms. Wyatt said is because of, yes, ma'am. So, okay, just my thoughts.
Indeed. All right. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. I'm comfortable with us staying with the 5 o'clock swearing in, unless somebody had other. I just wanted to bring it forward as something that's been a point of discussion within the FSBA. All right. Ms. Fields, you're recognized.
I'm comfortable too. I think that if we want to do it, we need to have more discussion, but November's right around the corner, so I think we need to leave it as is.
All right. Very good. And Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Thank you. So the second topic that was in all of this was how we select our chair. I appreciate you getting the information from FSBA. It seems like everyone is doing something a little bit different. I would like to see us move forward with we nominate several people and then we vote on which of the nominees gets the highest vote. That seems to be, to me at least, that seems to be the most collegial way to do it, to not vote down another board member. I will never forget my very first vote on the board was voting for Ms. Fields to be our chair. But oftentimes, if you don't want that person to be chair, do you want your first vote to be voting against one of your colleagues? What type of precedent does that set for your relationships on the board? So that continues to be my thoughts on it. It's reassuring to see that many other districts are doing it that way, but that's where I stand.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
I'm going to speak to the second part too. I actually see it a little different light than Board Member Wyatt. To me, it's you're having to make a decision and reorg as a new board member between colleagues. At that point, you are essentially telling someone no. If there's more than one person that's been nominated, you definitely are telling somebody no, which could hurt collegiality of the board, versus if you have one person, you're only telling one person yes or no. So you could technically go through and just not tell anybody no as a new board member. That doesn't mean that that's the way we should do it because of that, but I just say I disagree with that sentiment, just because you are technically telling someone no. So let's say, if person A and person B are both nominated and you have to select one or the other, you're telling someone yes and someone no by your vote. I have no problem with doing that, but I could see where that could affect collegiality of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. All right. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to my experience as a new board member. And to preface with this, I'm in Leadership Florida, and I will not be in the November meeting. So this is not based on anything that I'm seeking. I just know that being in District 7 or the N districts, that the decision is made before they get to me to vote. And if I'm voting down someone, that I would be, Mr. Sharpless. I think that however we decide to nominate is fine. I think the way they tick out votes is it's just not, I've seen it done better, and I was hoping we could move forward in a process. But it's about processes, and it's a board decision, so I'm not sure what other people think on that.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
So I'm hearing there's going to be an even number of board members here at that meeting? Great, okay, good. Okay.
I apologize, I will be missing this.
No worries. Yeah.
I obviously admire their work, but duty calls.
Understood, yeah. That, in my mind, as a parliamentarian kind of person, that just, I shy away from even numbers on bodies. Tie votes are not something I like. Or tie, then you have to have tiebreakers, I guess, but in any event.
All right, Ms. Miller, or I'm sorry, Ms. Fields, you're recognized.
I think the whole process is very challenging in itself. And as Mr. Sharpless says, no matter how you do it, someone can be offended. I don't know how you get around that. I think sometimes before we even have the nominations, it's already decided in advance. And it is very challenging and troubling at times, but it is what it is. And so I think it actually puts the superintendent in a tough spot too, because he or she are trying to see whose hand go up first and acknowledge that, and then the next hand and all that. So I don't know how you do it. I don't have any suggestion in the situation, but I just think that at some point in time, it could definitely be a lot better, a lot smoother, and a lot less offensive.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fields. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
Just to comment on what Ms. Fields, two things. Outside influences or sunshine law should be reminded to a lot of this, because it can, the lens from different people have always been kind of funny when we do the process like we do it. I can tell you that raising the hand, I've seen other people do it better, but every year we talk about doing it better, and we don't change how we do it. So we have to decide what year we decide to do it better. And I think that's where we are, but I like it is what it is. We'll eventually decide to have a more updated process and procedure. I would just need other board members to decide that what we're doing is not the best practice.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I'll just put a couple comments here on that. Doing the research, you can clearly see that you've got school districts all around the state of Florida doing it exactly like we do, and actually a higher percentage. So I don't think it's like we're doing it some backwoods way. This is how it's being done across the state as well. Now, I would say even across the nation, right? Because if you do the meta search on the policies across the nation, you see that it's in policy form. Probably a little bit more laid out than ours is. So, there's definitely a conversation to take it through policy-making process. But I would say that we are doing it very clearly in congruency to other school districts across the state. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Nolte, you're recognized.
Well, since I'm the only one up here that's been teaching in the public school system for 36 years, and I don't want to see all the extra stress put on Mr. Hyde, I'll be glad to figure out which one to go with.
No, I think that would probably not be a good idea.
Okay.
You'd have to vote. I'm sure the superintendent appreciates your offer, but that would be, yeah, it's interesting, Board Chair Allen, the information that you've provided distilled down in a very readable format does suggest that at least 30% roughly of the school districts, is this just state of Florida, or is this? Yeah. The 15, of those 15 that responded, it does appear that they are doing it in the manner that we are currently doing it.
Yeah. And if you read the other option, their comments, you'll see that they follow more, some of them fall more in line with our process as well. Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
Understood.
I don't want my comments to be confused. I'm not saying that we have to do it one or the other. That honestly doesn't matter to me. as long as we get a new, a board chair and a vice chair, that's what matters. My point is, it doesn't matter which method you use, someone's going to get offended. In that, I mean, eventually we have to just put on, our work boots and just say, hey, you know what, it's going to happen, So it doesn't matter to me either way. With that being said, it does disappoint me that there's some comments made that, sunshine law is not being followed or there's issues with that. I hope that's not happening. So, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. Ms. Fields, you're recognized.
Okay, so I want to thank you, Dr. Allen, for doing the research. And I like the first attachment that talks about the organizational meeting and what needs to be covered. And I think that it is very important, whoever is going to be the chair and the vice chair and the board members in general understand what the role and responsibilities are. And even though they might assume the position of chair and vice chair, and you guys do a good job with that, so I'm not singling out anybody here, I'm just talking in general, that everyone knows what that entails, and that at the end of the day, everyone's opinion matters, and that everyone needs to be given an opportunity to voice that even when it's not in agreement with the other members on the board. And again, I think we do a good job of that, but I just think we need to make sure that it's understood what the role is and what the boundaries are.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Fields. And I guess, Superintendent, are you wanting to be recognized?
I was. I'm sorry, it took me a while to figure out how to raise my hand. I don't typically do that.
That's the first time I've ever seen the superintendent come up on speaker list.
That's why I'm chuckling over here and they're making fun of me, but Mr. Murphy, I'm going to ask this of you.
Sure.
Because this topic has come up repeatedly, and I have been in other districts where board members who are traveling either due to an emergency or either traveling, and again, this is not just because of Ms. Miller, but there are multiple board members here in which this has come up. If they're traveling for business and there is a physical quorum present, is there not an allowance for, because I know we talked about the uneasiness of having an even number, and that's a real issue. So whether it's for this topic or another topic, is there not an allowance for that, or is that a matter of the board would have to adopt policy for that? And it's really just a clarification for me, because this is probably the fourth time this topic has come up.
There is a body of developed statute for agencies of the state of Florida. Now, whether or not you consider this statutory corporation an agency, but there are certain policies and procedures that can be adopted that authorize potentially virtual attendance. We haven't done that here, to my knowledge.
No, we have.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
we did,
We have.
During COVID.
I have-
but during COVID only.
No,
But
before
it-
COVID.
Well, in any event,
We have.
in any event, generally speaking, the absence needs to be occasioned by some extraordinary circumstance, such as health, or, you're marooned by some force majeure, or some issue that it isn't a voluntary, oh, I have another meeting I have to attend, or I can't be there because I have another commitment.
Okay.
And you certainly, I know that you have to have a physical quorum present, as you've noted. And then the question is, well, can you count the vote if you have someone that's attending virtually? And depends on the issue and on whether, the technology that's employed and whether there's enough citizen and/or constituent opportunity for interaction. And so that's a pretty loaded question. And I think it's probably best, more of a conservative answer, to tell you if you're not here, that the reason why you're not here is important. And I think that's what Ms. Cunningham is alluding to. And then the question of, can you let a board member participate but not vote? Maybe that's the way that, that can work. Do they allow to participate in discussion? And if you do that, then do you open it up for the members of the public who can't physically get here to have the opportunity? So you just sort of open up perhaps an unintended
Okay.
can of worms, but
I'll do a little bit more research to see
I
what
think we-
others are doing, just because
Yeah.
this is probably the fourth or fifth time something similar has come
Yeah.
up. And again, by no means would I ever support just allowing someone to do it because they're on personal vacation. I'm talking about a personal emergency, or they're traveling on behalf of the board to further the board's business. If they have to be away, if there's a physical quorum present, it would just make sense to say that they could join. But again, I'm happy to work with you and others to see what policies may or may not exist to support or refute that, so.
Well, and I worked with your staff, Teresa Griffin and Chad Davis, and Neola has come up with some potential virtual attendance stuff that we've just sort of put on hold for the time being, because it will require a little bit further
Absolutely.
delving into it.
Yeah, it wouldn't address this issue, but again.
Not for the
because
19th.
recurring nature of it, I'd
Right.
like to.
It's a valid point.
All right, very good. Anything else, Superintendent?
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just want to preface with, I did not intend to think I was going to vote in the November meeting, and I knew about this meeting ahead of time. It's an honor to be asked to be part of Leadership Florida. It's what I do. I stay in the weeds doing a lot of things. I would never think that, that needs to be a bigger discussion, but we need to have that discussion one day. We have people that travel, and we have people, I was out with a health issue at one point, but charter schools are almost all they're almost all virtual. I've been in a couple of meetings where some of them are local, especially our local boards, where we've asked that there be one person that lives here be on their board. Most of the rest of the people are not. They are all from South Florida, especially for a couple of the schools. So I think there is allotment for that, but we probably should discuss that and how much. I do think that it can get really gray quick, having people call in, especially vacationing or whatever. So that needs to be addressed. And Mr. Sharpless, I just want to say that in respect for people here and past, that I will not talk about past practices that have happened and me being contacted about votes that I take on this board, especially for the chair position. So I agree with you. I hope that that's an end and we don't see that anymore, because it's definitely unethical and no one needs that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. White, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just was going to comment that it does look like we've addressed that we revised a policy in 2021 to address virtual abilities, and that's in policy 165.
Thank you, Ms. White. All right, I see no other discussion on that item, so we will move on. And I would say, look, if anybody's truly interested in making a change, you have the power, and we all have the power to instigate policy recommendation and changes. And I think if you look in those documents, you can see that there are policies, Neola policies, that spell out the reorg process a little bit cleaner than the way that we do. So that's definitely open for discussion. So a continued discussion. All right, I'd like to move down now to our board member reports. If you have anything to report out, now would be a good time to do that on your committee work. Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
Just want to say that earlier this month, I attended, let me pull it up here, as well as Dr. Allen, attended the Board of Directors Leadership Development Training and Meeting for the Florida School Board Association. And a lot of great work happening there. It's going to be, really important. There's going to be some town halls coming up through the Florida School Board Association because we're looking at reimagining the executive officer positions there. So I highly suggest fellow board members that you join those when those become public, and they'll be sent to your inboxes, I'm sure, from Florida School Board Association. Also want to I just have a question during this time. So who's our advocacy for Florida School Board Association? Who's our rep for that? I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me. You are? Okay. So they are adopting the platform for the legislative platform on Friday. So I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but if anyone has any revisions, I'm assuming they would just contact you to advocate, or no? I did. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, that was just what is our practice in the past? I wasn't sure, so okay. The individual just contacts the, okay. Okay.
And so I'm not really sure how we're doing that now.
Ms. Dodge did reach out to us today. So there will probably be an opportunity. We're starting with cabinet, but that'll be extended to board members, and then we'll be able to land on our legislative platform. So I will provide you with the details and the timeline for that.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't meaning to call you out. I was wondering about I want to make sure I'm following the practice that we do. That's all.
Not a problem. I was going to talk to the superintendent first about who is the staff person that's going to be spearheading that. And I will be on the call on Friday, and I'll report that back to the board and to the superintendent.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Ms. Miller, you are recognized.
Yeah, I just want to address that specific request. In the past, even if our legislative platform is different, or if there's a national item, I work a lot with IDEA and the funding of IDEA, so I've always sent back. You can send outside of what we're doing here if you have a priority, especially at the federal level. I think you can send that back just for feedback, and other districts have similar concerns. They might have similar concerns as you, but that's done separately. I have always practiced doing it separately than what we decide here together as our legislative platform.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Miller. And yeah, I was going to say as well, I was in attendance with Mr. Sharpless at the FSBA event, Board of Directors, and great event. Basically, all the committee appointments gathered, and the chair and vice chair collaborated on that committee action plan for the year. And I'll be serving as the chair for the Federal Relations Subcommittee. And as you know, historically, FSBA sort of removed themselves from the NSBA, and then they were one of the original founders for COSBA, which is the Coalition of State School Board Associations, and we just had our second-year conference in D.C. So then within the federal relations, we then bring that legislative platform up and representative of the state to the coalition at the national level. And I think we have at least 16 to 20 states are involved in that coalition at this point, or that consortium. So, all right, very good. Well, if we don't have any other, actually there was, Superintendent Hyde, I did, as early as this morning when I logged in, we did have an action item or an agenda item that was on the work session that was pulled off. I don't know if you want to just speak to that. That was the one on the high school. I think it was item number 12, and somehow that one got removed this morning.
Actually, I will defer to Mr. Murphy. That was based off the recommendation of General Counsel. We are still in the process of negotiating and operating under the cone of silence. We had intended on bringing external counsel in, but based off my conversation with Mr. Murphy, the recommendation was to not have that conversation at this time.
That's correct, and we, that along with Mr. Williams, who's the special counsel that's assisting us with this, they're still in the process. The cone of silence, as Board Member Wyatt pointed out at the board meeting on September 24th, is still in effect. There is no recommendation or decision being recommended yet by the superintendent to the board. When that happens, we will then have a public discussion. I would note, just as a matter of information, that the superintendent may, if he desires, brief individual board members to the extent there are, questions or informational things. That's certainly a possibility. But for now, the public meetings, we want to be real careful. We want to step carefully. There are people in attendance at these meetings, the general members of the public. That has come to my attention that we want to just be very mindful of how we have conversations in the public about this process, which is still in play. So, based on that, that was my advice.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And if we have no other business to come before the board, I would say if we can maybe come back for our discipline hearing at 4:10. Is that okay? Gives you a little break. 4:10. That be fine? All right. This meeting is now adjourned.
I